Hello everybody, my name is Michelle Hernandez. My presentation topic is Jean Piaget, and today you'll be learning about his cognitive development theory. Hope you enjoy it. So who was Jean Piaget? He was born on August 9, 1896 in Switzerland. At the early age of 10, he became extremely fascinated with mollusks. By the time he was 18, his papers on mollusks were being widely published. Unaware of his age, his readers considered him an expert in the topic. After high school, he went on to study zoology, and by 1918 received his PhD in natural sciences. While he worked at the Binet Institute, Piaget quickly became intrigued with the reasons children gave for their wrong answers on the questions which required logical thinking. He probed for explanations of the child's errors using open-ended techniques of psychoanalysis. It was then when Piaget's genetic epistemology emerged. Piaget's goal was to discover the characteristics of natural logic, such as the logic of the acting, speaking, reasoning individual in all of its various forms. He addressed the areas of children's language and thought, children's understanding of causality and the world, moral development, arithmetic reasoning, stages in infant cognitive development, the components of logical thinking, and analysis of pre-logical thinking. Jean Piaget's work demonstrated ways that young children organize their experiences and think about the world, and that is why he is known as the giant in the nursery. The focus of Piaget's theory was to discover the origins of natural logic and the transformations from one reasoning to another. As a result, he investigated the roots of logical thinking in infancy, the kinds of reasoning that a child engages in, and the reasoning process of the adolescent and the adult. Before Piaget, psychologists saw little differences in the thinking processes of children and adults. Piaget argued that intelligence and knowledge are not static quantities or things. He believed that knowing is a process which develops through the individual's adaptation of the environment, and it is ever-changing. Therefore, in this process, the individual and the environment cannot be separated. Piaget approached his study of learning about intelligence with 4 questions. What is the nature of knowledge? What is the relationship between knower and reality? What is the nature of intelligence? And what are appropriate methods of investigation? In his view, biology provided the answer to the nature of intelligence, and psychology addressed the issue of the appropriate methods of study. So what is the nature of knowledge? Knowledge is knowing that it is created, and it is created by the activity of the learner. The second question, what is the relationship between the knower and reality? The answer is, the learner cannot separate themselves from the ever-changing environment. The individual and the object are fused. Third question is, what is the nature of intelligence? Piaget believed that human intelligence functioned like biological organisms because they are both systems that grow and develop. The last question is, what are the appropriate methods of investigation? The answer is through observation and experimentation. Piaget discussed 4 essential factors in cognitive development necessary to learn. Those 4 factors are contact with the physical environment, maturation, the social environment, and equilibration. Contact with the physical environment is essential because interactions between the individual and the world are the source of new knowledge. However, contact is not enough unless the individual can make use of the experience. Maturation is important because it allows the child to realize maximum benefit from physical experience. It opens up possibilities for development. Development proceeds at different rates as it depends on the nature of the child's contact with the environment and his or her own activity. The social environment includes the role of language, education, and contact with others. Without social interaction, the child would be unlikely to initiate the actions required to change inaccurate ideas. Just like with physical experience, social experiences can accelerate or delay the development of cognitive structures. Equilibration is the 4th and last factor. This factor consists of the set of processes that maintain a steady state in intellectual functioning in the midst of transformation and change. It regulates the individual's interactions with the environment and allows cognitive development to progress in a logical and organized manner. Psychological structure is one of the three concepts that reflect the nature of logical thinking in Piaget's theory. According to Piaget, the basic units of logical thinking are particular kinds of cognitive activity referred to as operations. Operations are the cognitive structures that govern logical reasoning in the broad sense. According to our textbook, without a system of logical thinking, children are unable to differentiate between knowledge and desire, fact and fantasy, or among what is, may be, must be, or cannot be. One of the characteristics of the psychological structure is transformation, which is when the state of an object is changed. However, even though it might have changed, the essential nature of the operation does not change. This is known as balancing compensations. When the child realizes that unchanging features, this is known as conservation. The final characteristic of psychological structure is reversibility, which is when objects can be transformed back into the original state. When the child understands that a transformation simultaneously and necessarily implies its inverse, he or she can now manipulate the situation and analyze it correctly. Operational structures may develop over months and years, and this development requires reorganizations of prior thinking. Piaget believed there were several stages a child went through in this process. In level 1, the child can't differentiate between reality, possibility, and necessity. In level 2, the thinker can imagine more possibilities, but they can't coordinate their observations. In level 3, children don't yet understand the principle of operational reversibility. They can, however, identify limitless choices and eliminate wrong ones to find the answer. In level 4, the construction of the operational structure of quantity develops. They can now predict in advance the necessary choices. The second key concept in the nature of logical thinking is the role of possibility and necessity. Necessity is when a child realizes that certain things he or she knows are true, also must be true. Knowledge depends on deduction, universality, certainty, and causal between states and affairs, whereas simply true knowledge is developed through induction, noting observable fact, probability, and contingent relations among events. Level 1 children can't distinguish between necessity, possibility, and reality. They believe that only one choice is valid, and this is identified as pseudo-necessity. Level 2A children think of few concrete co-possibilities, and possibilities are limited to those the child can imagine. Level 2B learners firmly establish concrete operations. Each possibility is among many that are conceivable. Level 3 thinkers recognize unlimited possibilities and systematically exclude possibilities until they arrive at the one that is necessary. The third key concept in the nature of logical thinking is the logic of meaning. Extensional logic refers to the logic of operational thinking. For example, the meaning of a term or a statement based on its extension to other terms or statements, or even a collection of white and yellow stars. The statement, "There are more white stars than yellow stars," is false. The relative quantity of the white stars is determined by the other types of stars in the collection. Shared meaning logic implies that 1. Knowledge always involves reference. 2. The meaning of an object includes what can be done with the objects as well as descriptions of it. And 3. Logic begins at the moment a child is able to anticipate a relation between actions. Piaget used terms to describe the essential nature of the interactions between intelligence and the environment. These terms are assimilation, accommodation, and equilibration. Assimilation is the integration of external elements into the organism's structure. In other words, what is perceived from the outside world is incorporated into the internal world without changing the structure of the internal world. For example, when a child has a Chihuahua dog, she calls it a dog. When she sees a cat for the first time, she also calls it a doggy. Accommodation is the adjustment of an existing schema or the creation of a new schema to match new information. Now, when the girl sees a cow for the first time, she refers to it as a doggy. However, this time her mom tells her that it is a cow, so now she will accommodate this new information. She will now learn that not every four-legged animal is a donkey. The child's reorganization of his or her thinking is not accomplished easily. They need to rethink their views of the world. When the child becomes aware that they hold two contradictory views, they realize that both can be true. This is known as cognitive conflict or disequilibrium. Equilibrium takes place when a child's schemas can deal with mostly information through assimilation. However, an unpleasant state of disequilibrium occurs when new information cannot be fitted into existing schemas. This is also known as assimilation. Equilibration is the force which drives the learning process, as we do not like to be frustrated and will seek to restore balance by mastering the new challenge, also known as the accommodation. Piaget's early research established that framework for his analysis of the thinking process. The four levels of complex reasoning are sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. Children's progress through each by building on what they already know. Each child goes through the same stages in the same order, and no stage can be skipped. Some, however, may never reach the latter stages. The sensory motor period takes place between birth and 1 year. Pre-symbolic and pre-verbal intelligence involves the development of action schemes. Inference begins when the infant develops relations among actions. The pre-operational period occurs between the ages of 2 and 8. This is when partially logical thoughts begin. Their decisions are based on the basis of perceptual cues. They still can differentiate between reality, possibility, and necessity. The concrete pre-operational period may take place between the ages of 7 and 14. During this stage, logical ways of thinking are linked to concrete objects are developed. They come to understand that a given operation simultaneously and necessarily implies its inverse. Also, they begin to develop co-possibilities. The final stage is the formal operation period, which tends to occur when the child is older than 14. They now have the capability of dealing logically with multi-factor situations. Reasoning proceeds from the hypothetical situation to the concrete. Piaget's concepts can be implemented in preschool and elementary school classrooms by providing activities for children's exploration. According to our text, there are 3 general objectives: the development of children's autonomy through interactive situations, 2, the decentering and coordination of various points of view by children, and 3, the development of alertness, curiosity, initiative, and confidence in learning. So that finalizes my presentation about Jean Piaget. Hope you enjoyed it. But before we wrap it up, here are some words from the man himself. The principal goal of education is to create men who are capable of doing new things, not simply of repeating what other generations have done. Men who are creative, inventive, and discoverers. Thank you.